Gregg Popovich is a joke. He's a great basketball coach, but he's a clown when it comes to discussing important social issues. He's a hypocrite. He claims that cowardice drives the behavior of politicians he disagrees with. Cowardice is what drives Popovich to avoid respectfully engaging with anyone who disagrees with him. Sunday afternoon, during a rambling 8-minute pregame screed, San Antonio Spurs head coach Gregg Popovich blasted Republican politicians for their reaction to the Nashville Covenant School massacre. Popovich claimed cowardice and selfishness explained Republicans' resistance to so-called sensible gun control measures. Take a listen.
You know, the greed of the gun lobbies and the manufacturers is obvious. We all know that. Money talks. But the cowardice and the selfishness of the legislators who are so scared to death of being primaried and losing their job, losing their power, losing their salary, you'd like to get each one of them in a room, just one by one, and say, what's more important to you? If you could vote for some good gun safety laws that most of the public agrees to, would you do that if it saved one kid? Or is your job and your money so important to you that you would say, screw the kid? What's in your mind?
Popovich then earlier ripped Josh Hawley, Jim Jordan, and Lindsey Graham by name. The legendary NBA coach and Texas resident mocked statements from Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn and Tennessee Governor Bill Lee after the shooting. Take a listen for yourself.
I'm sure that, people like Josh Hawley and the three people I mentioned here in Texas, I didn't mention their names, I mentioned their positions, or, Lindsey Graham or Jim Jordan, whoever of them have kids or nieces or nephews or grandkids. Can they imagine that happening to theirs? Are they incapable of knowing what that's like? I mean, I couldn't believe it, so I wrote this thing down. That Senator Marsha Blackburn, her comment after the massacre, my office is in contact with federal, state, and local officials, and we stand ready to assist. In what? They're dead. What are you going to assist with? Cleaning up their brains off the wall? Wiping the blood off the schoolroom floor? What are you going to assist with? And then there's Governor Lee. I'm sorry to go on and on, but Bill Lee. I'm closely monitoring the tragic situation. Please join us in prayer. What are you monitoring? They're dead. Children. They're dead.
Quite a performance Pop put on. The assembled media swallowed his anti-gun propaganda without uttering a word of opposition. Popovich takes pride in smugly carrying himself as the smartest man inside any gymnasium. The media oblige. Pop isn't nearly as smart as he thinks. His illogic is just never challenged. He ducks intellectual competition. He's the schoolyard bully who always picks a fight with people half his size and skips school on the days he knows a legit challenger is looking to confront him. It's easy to sound smart and look tough when you know no one is going to swing back. Popovich called the Second Amendment and defenders of it a myth and a joke, a game. He ridiculed Texas Senator Ted Cruz for wanting to double law enforcement personnel at schools. Take a listen.
When I pick up my 6 and 11-year-old grandkids at school when I'm here at home, on the way, it goes through my mind that I hope they're going to be okay. And most of you in this room, when we were in school, we worried if Nancy would dance with us on Friday after the football game or something. That was our anxiety. But they're going to cloak all this stuff, the myth of the Second Amendment, the freedom. It's a myth, it's a joke. It's just a game they play. I mean, that's freedom. Is it freedom for kids to go to school and try to socialize and try to learn and be scared to death that they might die that day? But Ted Cruz will fix it because he's going to double the number of cops in the schools. That's what he wants to do. Well, that'll create a great environment. Is that freedom? Or is it freedom to have a congressman who can make a postcard with all his family holding rifles, including an AR-15 or whatever? Is that cool? Is that like street cred for a Republican? That's freedom? That's more important than protecting the kids? I don't get it.
Pop, let me help you out. Do you feel free when you step into an NBA arena to work and there are as many as 50 law enforcement officers inside the building? Do you feel free? Does Pop feel free when he drives to the arena and passes the 20 to 30 officers working traffic and crowd control? How about the 2 to 6 armed security officers who travel with the Spurs everywhere they go? Popovich doesn't find it strange that the NBA will dump millions upon millions of dollars into protecting basketball players with armed security, but he will balk at providing the same security to innocent children at schools. Has there ever been a mass shooting at an NBA, NFL, NHL, or Major League Baseball game? At any major sporting event? Could it be that heightened security prevents mass shootings? Could it be that heightened armed security creates a sense of safety and lessens anxiety? How many armed police officers protect Nick Saban and Bill Belichick after a football game? How many protect Popovich? Gregg Popovich is a joke. He's a great basketball coach, but he's a clown when it comes to discussing important social issues. He's a hypocrite. He claims that cowardice drives the behavior of politicians he disagrees with. Cowardice is what drives Popovich to avoid respectfully engaging with anyone who disagrees with him. I'm quite confident Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, Marsha Blackburn would have no problem debating the Second Amendment with Gregg Popovich. I would love to interview Popovich about the issue. I'm no expert, I'm just a sports writer. Me and Pop would be equals. I would just be a sports writer interviewing a basketball coach, and we can talk about the Second Amendment. I wouldn't call him names. I'd simply like to challenge him on his narrative about the myth of the Second Amendment. Why does Popovich believe he's smarter than the Founding Fathers? Why are basketball players worthy of more armed security than school children? At one point, Popovich claimed that people from all across the globe are laughing at America over our gun laws. Maybe that's true. But they're not laughing at the freedom our gun policies provide the average American citizen. Those Second Amendment-backed freedoms are why people all across the globe desire to gain citizenship in America. History has proven that armed citizens will do far less violence and damage than a government that does not fear heavily armed citizens. School shootings are tragic. No one's denying that. Unopposed, tyrannical governments slaughter millions, including children. Governments always turn tyrannical when they have no fear of their citizens. Career politicians become know-it-alls. They're the smartest person in every room. Gregg Popovich reminds me of Joe Biden, a political lifer. Biden is not a doctor or a scientist. He spent 50 plus years in politics. Overnight, he became an expert on contagious diseases and COVID. He called COVID a pandemic of the unvaccinated. He predicted massive deaths for the unvaccinated. If American citizens were unarmed, Joe Biden would have sent armed police officers to our homes and forced all of us to take the experimental medical trials produced by Big Pharma. Is that freedom? That's what I'd love to ask Gregg Popovich. I used to be anti-Second Amendment. I was naive. I didn't believe liberals were capable of imposing their views by force. The last decade has shaken me from that naivety. I've watched Democrats cheerlead Antifa and Black Lives Matter rioters as they burned, looted, and murdered across the country. I'm watching now as Democrats encourage the transgender crowd to impose their worldview by force. None of this is new. Shortly after the Civil War, Democrats launched the KKK to intimidate Republican voters. That's not me making up history. Go check it yourself. That's why the KKK was launched. It was a political strategy to impose Democrat policies on Republicans. But Gregg Popovich is a typical leftist. He's a bully. He's an elitist. He wants one set of rules for himself and other elites, and an entirely different set for people he deems beneath him. He wants the government to take your guns because he's made enough money to pay men to carry his. It's cowardly.